part of this revolution has been non-Islamic, and you, I think you were talking about this Islamic as a religion, Islamic as a culture. And could you talk about this non-Islamic movement?
Yes.
As a political aspects of it.
Sure. As I mentioned, for a long time, basically Arab politics, especially in 1980s and 90s, had been characterized, or rather had been consumed really by Islamist politics. Opposition groups basically had seen in Islamism as a credible alternative to the secular and often undemocratic states. But there is a change in that kind of politics. I think there has been a significant rethinking about whether or not Islamism as a politics, as a vision, can have a workable and really future. I think there is a rethinking, and this rethinking has been reflected in the current revolt. So that the language of the revolts and revolution is not really a religious language. It is a language of openness, of freedom, of language of dignity, and basically movements which do want to get rid of the current authoritarian regimes. They are not religious movements at all, despite the fact that the majority of people who participate in it, they are religious, they are faithful, but there are also seculars, non-religious people, and of course non-Muslims.
And can you talk about the role of Al-Qaeda, like say in 1980s, 90s, and how the new revolutions that are taking place in Egypt and Tunis is like sort of like opposite or counter to their style?
Definitely. Of course, we know that bin Laden was killed, a couple of days ago, last week. I think ideologically, bin Laden had been dead. I think by and large, by the growth of these revolutionary movements. These revolutionary movements had made bin Laden himself, and especially his ideologies, totally irrelevant. And they didn't have anything to say. Interestingly, after when revolution happened in Egypt, Ayman al-Zawahiri, who is the number 2 of Al-Qaeda, for weeks didn't know what to do, what to say. After a few weeks, he comes out on television and on video, saying that these are revolutions which have been inspired by Islam, by religion, and trying to justify his own position, which in reality has not been really the case. So therefore, it is a total really alternative in a way to the kind of politics and the kind of methods that Al-Qaeda had been adopted, and really it has made it irrelevant.
So if would you say that this is a departure from Islamic political movement in a sense of for taking over the state?
Right. I think there is an indication that these movements somewhat indicates a transformation of Islamism. I think it heralds the coming of what I have called post-Islamist times, that we are now moving at a different sort of stage in the politics of the region, and also in politics basically in Muslim societies in general. And there is a change towards a politics which wants to see these societies to be largely civil, democratic, but also without necessarily losing sort of touch with religion. I mean, a lot of people who are in the ranks of revolutionaries are religious people. They are faithful. They do want, however, to have a democratic state. In the meantime, that they want to maintain their piety, their religiosity. So they want to be both Muslim and at the same time a Democrat.
Is that possible?
I think it is very much possible, and there is no reason why we shouldn't assume that someone could be a Muslim and Democrat in the way that somebody could be a Jewish and Democrat and Christian and Democrat and a Buddhist a Democrat.
So the state of Israel will lose its role as the only democratic society?
Probably it will. There's certainly a possibility that the Israeli state, by and large, has identified itself as the most democratic country in the region. But of course, if these societies succeed, if these revolutions succeed in unleashing democratic principles in those societies in the Middle East, then that monopoly of democracy in Israel will end.
And if you don't mind me shift a little bit, these revolutions, are they anti-imperialist revolutions or not?
Well, I think people in the Middle East, the Arab people and non-Arabs in the Middle East, have had certainly this anti-imperialist politics for a long time, for a good reason. That there are two things that has really defined and somewhat determined in the politics in the Middle East: is oil and Israel. Oil, in the sense that big powers through oil have wanted to have a foothold in the region, that has instigated a reaction on the part of the people to maintain their independence. And so therefore that has shaped their anti-imperialism. But at the same time, they see Israel as a closest probably ally of the West, especially the United States, operating, however, in the heart of the region itself. So therefore, for years they have held this anti-imperialist posture. But this anti-imperialist, I think, concern that they have had in the past, especially anti-Zionism, in the region, has in somewhat been manipulated by these countries' authoritarian and regimes. So in this revolution, what has happened, that people have understood that it is perhaps better strategically to focus on creating a democratic state, to get rid of their authoritarian states, and then to create a condition where democratically they can wage their anti-imperialist struggle. Today we see that, for instance, in Egypt, opening of that passage, of Rafah between Egypt and Gaza Strip is a given, and I think the vast majority of people want to have to see that opened to help out, Palestinian people in Gaza, which have been basically encircled by the closures imposed by Israel. And I think that this demand will always somewhat be there. And I think the Egyptian government is going to do so. So through these ways, in fact, they feel that when you have a democratic system, it would be more efficient in some way to solidarize with the Palestinians and to help them to kind of regain their national rights.